It's 11 o'clock. We're going to get started. It looks like we have about 75 people on board. I'm sure a few more will join us, but out of respect for all of your time, let's get started. Welcome to all of you. We know that there are a million places you could be today at this time, and we are just so grateful that you decided to spend some time here with us this morning for this wonderful webinar, Transforming Your Clubs, and this membership summit for District 7450 and 7210. Let me do a few recognitions and housekeeping before we get started. Thank you to our two host districts, 7450 from southeastern Pennsylvania. David Houts is here. He's our district governor. And Renee Dukowski is here, our governor-elect. Francie Cross is our governor nominee. She's somewhere in California heading toward an airport and may or may not be able to jump on with us, but thank you 7450 for hosting us, and 7210 New York, Hudson Valley. Governor Larry Palat is here. I see him on the call, and my co-host, my co-organizer in all of this, my partner in crime, typically, past Governor Tony Marmo. Thank you, Tony, for all of your help in organizing this. We're up to 81 participants. I think we'll probably get over 100 before we're all done today. So thank you to all of you. Renee is fresh back from Orlando. We saw her there, and Stephanie was there. Stephanie, as you'll hear in a minute, came out of Orlando with a little bit of a cold, so special thanks to her for being here today. She's a bit under the weather. Also with us today, I don't know that I see them, but I think that they're supposed to be on, our Zone 32 Rotary Coordinator, Herb Klotz. Herb, if you're here, hello. We'll be hearing more from you toward the end of this. And our Rotary International Regional Membership Coordinator, Diana Edwards. I don't know that I see either of them on here, but I'm not able to.
Yeah, I am here, Jeffrey.
We are here.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. A little more housekeeping. During any part of our session today, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, and then we'll be fielding those questions after the end of Tom and Stephanie's formal presentation. This session is being recorded, and both Tony Marmo and David have the slide deck that Tom and Stephanie are going to be using. And so we'll make that slide deck available to you if you want it for your future reference. Once Stephanie and Tom have completed their presentation and fielded questions, we're going to let them depart if they need to. We know that you guys, this is a really busy time of the Rotary year for you. This session will go 90 minutes. We don't expect Stephanie and Tom to stay for all of that. Once they have departed, then we'll continue on with any discussion, follow-up questions that we need to have as we end this session. So, without further ado, we are so grateful. It is not easy to coordinate the calendars of Tom and Stephanie through Evanston and senior leader support and Stephanie's assistant, and it took a while, but we're here on January 21st. And we are grateful to our two speakers this morning for making this time available to all of us and to each of you for this Club Transformation and Membership Summit. We appreciate you, Stephanie, and we appreciate you, Tom, and we are very grateful for your presence here today. So please, we're going to welcome Tom Gump, past Governor Tom Gump, who is also a North American Innovative Club advocate and the aide to the president, aide to Stephanie, and to our Rotary International president nominee from the state of Pennsylvania, USA, Stephanie Yurchak. So Tom and Stephanie, take it away.
Well, thank you so very much, Jeffrey and family of Rotary. It is so good to be with you today, and thank you all for the warm welcome and for inviting us. As Jeffrey mentioned, I picked up something in Orlando at IA, thousands of people there, and it's no surprise that I got some kind of upper respiratory issue. So I'm going to do my best to get through the presentation, but if it gets really bad, at some point I might just say, hey, Tom, take it away. So like every business, Rotary has a product And that product is our club experience. Now, when you encounter a product or a service that isn't good, what do? Well, if you're like every other person I know, you go somewhere else, or you find another product. You let go of it. And it's no different for Rotarians. So today, past District Governor Tom and I want to share with you some ideas about how do you transform club culture so that the product is so irresistible, members stay and new members join, and that we realize diversity, equity, and inclusion. So past District Governor Louisa Horn is on this call, and I know she knows the term simply irresistible because she started using it about the same time I did. So thank you, Louisa, for being on the call today. So our purpose today is to get you thinking about how it feels to walk into your club as a guest or as a member, and also how to create a new culture if it doesn't feel at its best. Club culture is a very powerful force. It's the unwritten rule book that determines how we do things around here. Or to put it another way, it's all the behaviors and attitudes of your members that reflect your club's values and beliefs. So if things are going smoothly in your club, if there's growth and diversity, if your foundation giving is good, if there's activity in all 5 areas of service, if your grant applications are getting approved and on and on and on, your club's culture is a source of strength. You've got an irresistible club. If, however, there's been a decline in one or more of those areas, the culture may need shifting to realize something different, maybe a little kind of change. Now, change is often met with resistance because it's based in the fear of the unknown. Even when we have the fullest amount of information possible, there are things we can't predict, and it can be scary. So let's do a quick exercise. Look at the screen. You'll see that there's a picture of a young lady with her arms crossed. So go ahead and do that now where you're sitting. Just cross your arms. So for some of you, you put your left arm over your right. And for others, you put your right over your left. So whatever you did, switch it around. Tom, how did that feel when I asked you to switch arms?
Actually, it was very uncomfortable, much like when my wife makes me take yoga class.
So, Tom, if this is so uncomfortable, if change is so unbearable and uncomfortable, why are we suggesting to Rotary clubs that they should consider changing?
Well, Stephanie, over the last 2 years, Rotary International has conducted a series of surveys, both with leaders and with members. And what we found out is people aren't leaving Rotary International, they're leaving a club. And the number one reason they leave their club is because they don't feel comfortable with the club's culture or its environment.
So clubs have to create intentionally this thing called culture. But one of the questions that we have is like, where do you start? How do you even know, if you need to switch your culture or change it? So where we begin is really with the assessment. So when was the last time your club, if ever, did a formal investigation of how it does things? When was the last time you did an assessment? Well, it's important to do this on a periodic basis because when you do a club assessment, you're likely going to find one of 3 things about your club. First, you're going to find out possibly that your club culture is good. Or you could find out that, well, our club culture maybe could be improved because, there are some issues and there are some things that aren't working. Or finally, you may find out that, oh my God, there's no hope for this club. There's nothing that can be done. So doing an assessment is very much like going on a diet. You have to jump on the scale at the beginning and see where you are in order to figure out if you've lost or gained weight. Oh my God, gained weight. Who does that? Well, anyway, you have to do an assessment. That's where you get an idea of what your club's culture is. It's going to give you a snapshot of how your club feels to members and to guests alike. And then as a group, you can determine if there is some appropriate way that you want to move forward to operate differently. So Tom's going to share with us now just how you can go about conducting Rotary Club assessments.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Assessments can do a lot of things. It can tell us if we need to change and actually why we need to change and maybe even how to do that change. And it's interesting, there's different types of assessments. Rotary International, of its membership department, has 6 different kind of assessments, and it's about to introduce a 7th, which is the induction survey. So, it's interesting when we conduct a survey, it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, you can go to Rotary's website, you could Google in health check or club membership satisfaction survey, and you might get a survey, and that survey may have technical verbiage in it and things like that, but you don't have to do that. What you can do is you could maybe take those surveys, put them into SurveyMonkey, simplify them. But when it all comes down to it, it could be as easy as asking your members if they like where you meet, how you deliver your program, if they like the socials, if they like your service projects. And really, when you actually ask for their input, they're going to appreciate that. And they're going to feel like they belong if you implement that, because people like being listened to. And it's funny, when you do the surveys, you get about 5%, and this is whether we do it virtual, we do it in real life, about 5% of the people say they're dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. But the interesting part is when you drill down as to why they're dissatisfied, it's often a very simple reason. And that's sometimes, I guess the most popular answer we get is that they don't like the time they meet. Maybe you're a morning club and they don't like waking up at 7 a.m. to get to a 7:30 meeting. So it's simple to fix, right? You can basically start a satellite club and they can meet at lunch. They still contribute to your membership. They still come to your socials. They still do the fundraising. And it's often, when we ask people, Stephanie, most people don't do surveys, most clubs, most districts, but when we do ask them, they say they usually do exit interviews. And really, that's probably the worst time to do an interview, because at that point, you can't make a change to keep that person. And also, Rotarians, like all of you, are nice, kind people, and they might be too nice and kind to tell you the honest reason why they're leaving. So what we suggest at Rotary International is doing a survey once a year. So when people come in, do a survey then, do a survey once a year. And then if you still want to do the exit interview, that's fine. So Stephanie, after we do the survey, what usually happens?
All right, so every time we do a survey, a formal or informal, you'll find out if it's clear that your group needs to transform. Well, one of the things you have to do is determine whether or not you want to move forward with change initiatives and activities that will transform the club. So when we look at this, we respond in much the same way as we do to other fight or flight situations in life. We notice a problem, and then we may move to a sense of mild alarm or panic or even fear. Like, what happens if my club keeps doing this? What happens, if my club goes away? So we're faced with a choice. Do we stay and fight to institute some change and transform? Or do we flee? Do we take off? Is it flight? Is it better to go find a different club or to start a different kind of group? Which one is a better choice is really going to depend. But in either case, something has to happen first. And what happens first is that moment that's called the freeze. If in that time, whether it takes seconds or hours or even years, you notice the problem and you see that it's not going away. And we come to terms with the fact that we need to do something to solve the issue. So freeze means you notice the problem and then you decide how you're going to deal with it. Will you fight or will you flee? The action you take is a product of deliberate thinking. So let me share a story with you here. I am in my 3rd Rotary Club. In my first Rotary Club, I was a member there for 10 years. Very happy, great club. But then I did a change in employment. So I had to move, and I joined a second club because I wanted to be closer to where I was working. that second club, I don't know how to describe it other than it was a deadbeat club. They didn't do anything. They didn't do community service. They didn't do international service. And here I was, a past district governor already. And so you know what happened. Every time I would talk, they would glaze over and they just wouldn't listen to anything that I would suggest. So I ultimately made the decision to flee, to take flight. And I ended looking for a different Rotary club. And now I'm in my third club and I'm very happy again, very active club, motivated, doing a lot of things. But here's what happened and what I did wrong. You know, we have to ask a critical question when we're in fight or flight situations. And one of them that we ask is, are there enough influencers in this club to help move the needle? Tom and I call them Sparkplugs. When you have other people in the club who are as committed to culture shift as you are, you have a good chance of having your ideas take hold. That was the problem in my first club. My second club, I was trying to do it all myself. When you try to transform culture, if you're the only member interested in doing that, that's a recipe for failure. So, Tom, tell us more about this idea of fleeing, and how do we know when it's time to move on?
Thank you, Stephanie. That's a great question. And you know, we all love our clubs. I belong to a traditional club. Stephanie calls them legacy clubs, and I would never leave my club. But sometimes there's individuals who aren't happy with the club. So, you know, there is hope. What you can do is actually you could form a new club. And why form a new club? Well, they actually work. I mean, new clubs actually grow Rotary quicker. When we started in my district, the Network for Empowering Women, we added 50 members at one time. It would take us a long time to add 50 individual members to our existing club. You know, new clubs also retain members longer. You know, we lose about 10% of our individuals who join Rotary every year. 10% of them leave within their first year. That was 19,000 people last year. And then 52% leave within the first 3 years. Now, after 3 years, they're like all of us. They have those lifelong friendships. We would never want to leave because we want to see Tony and Jeffrey and we want to do those projects and have the socials with them. You know, when we started the first ever Veterans Club in the world, those individuals, some of them drive 2.5 hours to come to a meeting or come to a social because they all have a passion. A lot of these new clubs are interest clubs or they're cause-based clubs, which means they focus around a particular cause that people are passionate about. And when people are passionate, they don't leave. So hopefully they stay passionate for 3 years or so until they know the Rotary way, and then they stay. And these new clubs also attract younger and more diverse members. You know, my generation, we were told to go out and serve the community. And that's what I do in my traditional club. We make sandwiches for people, for the hungry. We rake leaves for people who can't rake leaves. And we pick up trash along the highway. But I tell you, if you go to Millennial and say, join our club, you can pick up trash. It doesn't get very far, right? And why is that? Because millennials want to have a great impact in one area and they want to focus in that area, say the environment. These new clubs also expand our reach, which was one of the strategic priorities from our action plan. They reach out into the community and they bring new people in. You know, when we started the first ever club to end human trafficking, 2 weeks after we formed, I was inducting a woman from Turkey. We were all excited because we didn't have a member from Turkey, even though we had members from other areas of the world. About 20 minutes after that, I received an email from the then sitting Rotary International president, Mark Daniel Maloney, letting me know that that was his sister we just inducted. And then he told me in the email, that he had been trying to get her into Rotary for 40 years, 4 decades, but we just didn't have a club that met her needs, the way she wanted to serve, and when she wanted to go to a meeting. So these new clubs can reach out to these potential people of action and bring them in. And also younger folks, they actually want to serve in a diverse club and they want to have a diversity of ideas. They don't want to just be around people who are just like them. And lastly, these new clubs, they actually increase our partnership opportunities. And the new clubs also work for Rotaract clubs. We started a Rotaract club to serve those with autism and their families. And we partnered up with a nonprofit, and it's going great right now. We did the same thing with partnering with the Rotary, the SRAG, Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, because those action groups, they're great in helping you plan projects and help you fundraise for projects, but they actually don't do the projects. And young people, like many of us, they actually want to get their hands dirty and plant those trees. So those are just some of the things that we can do. And the main thing to remember is if you want to start a club, it's not hard to do, and there's people to help you. So Stephanie, why is it important that we get buy-in?
So buy-in is an important concept because it's a way to make sure that your ideas are going to take hold. So Tom's been talking a lot about creating new clubs and innovative clubs like satellites, where you really don't have to change culture because you create it from scratch. But the reality is most of us on this call are in legacy clubs. We're in clubs that have been around for a while and they have established cultures. So how do you move forward with a legacy club, a traditional club? And one of the best ways to do that is to create buy-in. Now, we already mentioned earlier one way to get buy-in, and that's when you do assessments and surveys. When you ask people for information or their opinion, that's a way for them to feel like they're being listened to. So you may not use anything that comes from a particular member, but the fact that you ask the member for their opinion is important, and that will help with problem solving and decision making. Two important things happen when you do that. One, you get information. Your members are going to tell you what's working and what's not working and come up with solutions. But secondly, they're going to feel like they had an opportunity to provide some input. In the United States, we have a saying that people don't wash rental cars. Of course not. They don't own them. So if you want to create buy-in, you want to create some ownership for these things that are happening, then it's important that you do ask members and you do engage members, even though what they have to offer may not change the outcome. So another important element is finding spark plugs in your club. We mentioned this. These are the influencers, the people that can help jump on the bandwagon and create a more appealing and appropriate club culture. So you need these people because trying to do it by yourself isn't going to work. Now, how do you find them? Well, I think you know the answer to this already. These are the members that have connection, and they're the creative ones, and they always want to contribute, and they have great communication skills, and they're not afraid to try new things. We all know from our businesses and our families that naysayers want everything to be perfect before they try anything. But spark plugs understand that you can perfect as you go. So when you're thinking about club culture, it's important to spend more time fueling these spark plugs and less time giving CPR to the naysayers. Tom, share with us some information about the change model that Rotary has.
Absolutely. Often when we go to president-elect training seminars, there's presidents always want to know the same thing. How do I grow membership? How do I speak in public? And how do I make changes without alienating my current members? Well, Rotary has this great model called the Rotary Change Model. And it's interesting because it works like a wheel. You can go and make progress, but if you're not making enough progress in a certain area, you could back up. And when you get to the top, you do it again. So we've been talking a lot about assessment, and we'll go through each of these. You first assess, then you design, then you build it, then you implement it, and then you have to sustain the change. So assessment's what we've been talking about when we're talking about the surveys. You have to find out what is the problem. You don't want to make change just to make change. You want to make change that is going to make your club better. So you have to understand what your club members want. And when you do the assessment, it's going to tell you what they want. And then you just have to paint a picture for them so that they understand the way to get what they want, whether it be more membership or more more service opportunities, you'll be able to get this change done because you'll be able to sell that idea because it's what they want. So when you're designing it, you should come up with a vision statement, talk to your team, and find out what tools you need. Let's say that you are an in-person club and you want to transform and become a hybrid club. Well, there might be equipment you need. You might need an OWL camera, or you might need a mixing board for the sound. Whatever tools you need, find what those are, and that's part of the design process. So then you go on to build. The most important thing in the build concept is come up with the communication plan, because you are going to have to be the influencer along with others, together, get those influences together and paint that picture and communicate it. And if it feels like the communication isn't going well, beef up that communication plan before you go into the implementation phase. And you get to implementation, the most important thing to remember is to nurture the people in your club. Stephanie loves to tell the story about Byron. Do you want to tell the Byron story, Stephanie?
Yeah, Byron was a member of my first Rotary Club. And as I mentioned, I was in the club for 10 years. But when I got there, I found out that Byron had been in that job for a long time. Well, by the time I left, Byron had been the treasurer of our club for 34 years. What's wrong with that picture? Oh my gosh, we should have, before we did it, we should have, mentioned to Byron, we'd really like you to try a different role. How about put a manual together so that we can get another member to accept a leadership role in the club and be the treasurer. And we want you to work on the golf outing or the gala or some other activity. 34 years in one job. Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
So the important part about that story is they gave Byron something to do. So Byron felt like he belonged in the club, even though they were telling him he can't be treasurer anymore. When we go around the world, either virtually or in person, and speak about change, there's some cultures that are inherently resistant to change. I mean, we're speaking to Thailand tomorrow. In Thailand, they respect their elders so much, they're afraid to introduce change. So in an average district in the US, we might have 3,000 people with 70 clubs. They might have 3,000 people with 130 clubs because they would rather start a club than try to make a change in a new club. Now, some areas, Vietnam right next door, they're into change. But the important thing is you can take your club, even if it's resistant to change, and you could change its culture to be an innovative club. And we like to tell the story about a president-elect training seminar we went to. We were trying, you know how it is, we try to get the presidents all fired up and shoot them out like they're coming out of a cannon. So they go back and start making those changes. So we went around and asked the president-elects, what change are you going to make? Because we wanted them to have that in their mind right before they left. So we were going around and there was a president-elect named Troy. And we asked Troy what change he was going to make. And he said, well, I'm going to have pie at dessert. That's what I really want. I want to have pie at dessert. I know many of you are smiling. The whole room burst out laughing. And it was interesting because a few years later, we ran into Troy again. And we asked him if he got his pie. And he said, yes, I got the pie. But he said a strange thing happened. People liked the pie, but because they made that change, people started offering other ideas to change. So that one small change, people started asking for other changes and they made those. And now that's one of the best districts, actually one of the best clubs in our district, because they changed from being resistant to change to being innovative. So sometimes, and you don't have to make the change even in your club. You can take a positive example from a club next door or from the Rotary magazine and just paint that picture. And then when you make that change, you want to sustain that change. Troy didn't want to have pie just for 1 year. Troy wanted to have pie as long as he was in his club. So what did he do? He brought in his president-elect. He brought in his president nominee. At the district, you can bring in your whole DG line. This is what Rotary International does. President Jen and President-elect Gordon and Stephanie meet every 2 weeks to talk about membership changes and other things. Because Rotary's got that power of that new energy by having new officers every year, but we also have to sustain that. That's part of our legacy. And then when you get that change, then do the assessment again. Because, it's interesting because our clubs are changing all the time. We have new people coming in, we have people leaving. So the group as a whole changes. So that's why we have to keep doing that assessment. But after we do the change, Stephanie, how do we communicate it in an effective way?
Well, when we talk about communicating, there are really two audiences that we want to reach. One, obviously, is our internal audience. It's the members of our club and the participants in our communities. And then externally, it's the people who aren't yet in Rotary, but should be. So really, there are two different ways to communicate. I want to share with you a different pie model. Tom talked about Troy the Pie Guy, but I want to talk about the pie model of success for a minute. And it is an acronym, PIE. So the first initial P stands for performance. You know, how an organization or a company or a culture does what it's supposed to do. Well, let's face it, Rotary is fabulous. We're people of action. We do amazing things, but that's only 10% of success. The second one, I, is for image. How are we seen? And again, Rotary spent a lot of time in the past decade rebranding. All of our logos are similar, and we have rebranded our master brand and our colors match. So when people encounter anything visually about Rotary, they get it. They know who we are. But that's only 30% of success. So 60% of success rests with that last letter, and that letter is E, and it stands for exposure. It's the ways that we communicate to the world everything that we do. So an important message here is make sure that you're using all of those available ways. You know, I'm very fond of saying and. It shouldn't be that you do this or that. It's you do this and that and that. So, you know, social media. All right. Let's do Facebook. Most of us on this call are over the age of 60. We figured it out. But how about our young professionals? Can they help us with Instagram and TikTok and Twitch and all those other things that I don't have any idea about? But we know that there are people who we'd like to reach in our audience to get that message. And we mentioned this before. Start small. Start with the club's influencers and get people involved in the process. Except that you can't convert all members at once. You want to start small. I remember vividly that when women were first introduced into Rotary and we gained access to membership, there were some clubs who had male members, and they said, if women come into this club, I'm leaving. And they left. Okay, well, you know, they obviously were the kinds of members who weren't going to accept the diversity, equity, and inclusion that we wanted. And they weren't committed to this new change. But then we've gained members. And so, you know, everybody isn't going to be fond of the change at the same time. Remember also that you have some traditions in your club that are important. Maybe it's the way you do socials. Maybe it's a special kind of ceremony. You don't want to get rid of everything all at once. You don't maybe want to get rid of any of that. Make sure that you keep some of those old traditions because they form the basis of, they're kind of glue that keeps your members together. Don't overuse power. We're all leaders on this call. And, you know, in our businesses, we know the concepts of leadership, and they're not any different than in our businesses for our Rotary clubs. And finally, keep diversity in mind because it's the diversity of your membership that gives your club that special perspective. They come to you in all kinds of shapes and sizes and religions and nationalities, and that's what makes us so special. So you'll see the slide that Tom has up. Reach out to local media. Remember that when you're reaching out to media, don't talk about your upcoming spaghetti dinner. You want to talk about the impact you have in your club. You want to talk about what your club is doing in the community and how you're changing lives, how you're creating some kind of lasting change. I already talked about utilizing social media. You know, get your young professionals. If you're linked up with an Interact or a Rotaract club, take advantage of the expertise that these people have. And I always end meeting with clubs by saying an active club is an attractive club. So make sure that you are looking at all 5 areas of service and all the areas of focus, and get engaged in something that makes a difference in your community or in the world.
So now comes our favorite part of any presentation, and that is answering your questions, because we want you to leave with the knowledge that you came seeking. So Jeffrey, you can feel free to fire them out at us, and we'd love to answer them.
Yeah, thanks. Tom, Stephanie, thank you so much. There's a lot to unpack there. We're glad that we've got the slide deck that we can share with our districts and those who are on the call, and we're glad that we're recording this. If you have a question, because we've got almost 100 people on this call, if you could put your question into the chat box, and then that'll help us to get them going. Tom, Stephanie, we can't tell you, and Stephanie, your voice, like honey, lemon, tea.
Yep. Tony gave me the recipe. Yep.
all that stuff. But if you could all just help me to thank Stephanie and Tom for their time here with us today.
Well, thank you all for inviting us. This is such an important message, and we just appreciate the time that we could share some of these ideas with you all.
Yeah, somebody just said, Larry Pallon from District 7210 just said chicken soup.
Yeah, that too.
So I'm sure we have a lot of home remedies for Stephanie, but we also want to, while we have them here, have them answer any of your questions. So either raise your hand using one of those little things on the bottom of your screen, or throw your question into chat. Stephanie, Tom, this is one piece. I mean, if we're going to turn membership in North America around, and we need to, this is like one piece, this club transformation. I mean, we have clubs in our district here and in all districts across North America who are hitting on all 8 cylinders, and they get it. And they've been through this process and they get it. But we've got a lot more clubs that don't. And I read a statistic recently that said for every 1 club that goes away, we have 2 clubs that are about to, I mean, it's just, the numbers are staggering. And this is a piece. Talk for a minute about some of the other pieces. Tom, we lose like clubs left and right. So we've got to be backfilling with new clubs. Talk about innovative club models for a second, if you can.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of things to talk about, and it's hard when we're asked to talk about all of membership in 40 minutes. But Jeffrey, why we are focusing on this is because it's the base model to take our infrastructure to get it to a point where we can start inviting people to our clubs. Because when our surveys show that people are embarrassed for their clubs, they don't want to leave their clubs, they stay, but they're afraid to ask new people. So we want to get the clubs to be simply irresistible, as Stephanie says. But there's all kinds of different ways that you can grow Rotary, but the most important ones are attracting new members to our current clubs when you feel that they're going to stay, when you have an attractive club. 2, we can actually engage our members, and that is so important. I mean, Jeffrey, when we look at the numbers for the year, the Rotary International Membership Growth Committee, they'll tell you last year, 23% of all the members that came into Rotary came from India. That's great. They were a net increase to our organization. That same percentage, to the percentage point, 23%, is what we attracted into North America. But yet North America, we were a negative overall on the numbers to Rotary International membership. Now, why is that? We're losing people. We're losing people. It's become a revolving door. What do they do in India that we're not doing here? Well, they really engage their members. Every time that someone comes into a club in India, they're assigned a mentor. Very few of our clubs in North America do that. My club doesn't do this, but my wife's club, as soon as someone joins, they're assigned a committee. So that engagement is important. So we recruit them, we engage them. And the last one that you want me to talk about, Jeffrey, is the new clubs. And why are new clubs important? Because we have 1.4 million wonderful members all around the world. But if we could actually be a little bit flexible in when we meet and how we meet, then we'd be able to attract more people of action into Rotary. Because right now, not everybody can go to a meeting. Most of our meetings in North America are Monday through Friday, either breakfast or lunch meeting. And a lot of people at work can't do that. We have school teachers that can't make it because they're teaching school at that time. In my district, in one of our clubs, Monticello, we started a satellite club where just the teachers, 8 of them, meet at the same hotel on the same day, but they meet at night when the club meets at noon. So it's all about flexibility and giving people what they want. Thank you so much for the question.
Let me
more-
tell you a story.
Okay.
Let me add to that a little bit. So in my club, once we did an assessment and we talked to all of our members, one of the things that came forward was that there just weren't enough young people in our group and our community. There are 250,000 people here. Why weren't we reaching them? Well, when we asked the question outside of the club, the answer was, we don't want to come to meetings. We like the idea of service, but we don't want to come to meetings. So we adopted a satellite model that was created in North Carolina called Impact Group. And so an impact group are people who love the concept of service. They get together twice a month and they go out in the community and they do service. And if they want to go have a pizza or go get a beverage, they can do that. They're full Rotary members. They pay complete Rotary dues. They come to our social events. They can come to our meetings if they want to. But the idea is when we got them all together and did our first induction, we brought in 15 new members into my Rotary Club in one night. Think about how long it takes your club to get 15 new members. So, there are lots of ways that our Council on Legislation in 2016 opened up the creativity for us to think about how we can expand our reach and bring people in. That's just one idea. But, the satellite model of impact is a great concept because it answers that question for people who say, I like what you're doing, but I can't come to meetings.
Thanks, Stephanie. So, Tom, and back to your comment and to piggyback on Stephanie's, what we're talking about when we talk about new clubs or innovative club models is just more shoe sizes to fit more feet.
Right.
We just have to offer more variety of how people can access us. And if you haven't, anybody on the call, if you haven't seen the video, it's like 2.5 minutes long called Anytown. Just Google it, Rotary Anytown video. It's on YouTube. Watch that video because that can help you to understand why an additional club in your community or in your district or 3 or 4 additional clubs are helpful to give us more shoe sizes to fit more feet. We've got questions coming in on chat now. So here's one for you from Juliet. What suggestions do you have for clubs that can't get members to step into leadership positions? Yikes.
So that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that because we're seeing it post-COVID a lot, even in the district governor position where only one person is applying and sometimes districts have no people applying. We have this action plan that Stephanie was on, head of the committee with 3 trustees and 3 directors. And one of the action plan priorities that come out of that is adapting. We need to make our governance more simple. If we make it more simple, we'll have more people apply for those jobs because people are busy. And Virginia McKenzie asked a similar question, Jeffrey. Virginia's was in club number 4 in Seattle, and she formed her own innovative club to end sex trafficking. And she asked the question, how can RI simplify administration for the clubs so that they could do more service? And Stephanie, you addressed this in the impact clubs, and those impact clubs, they only do service projects. They have a separate board that meets at a separate time that does the governance. So what RI wants to do in this action plan is it wants each club to look at its governance models and see what is too weighty. How can we shed this? How can we make it easier? So we need to make the job easier to attract more people. I mean, let's face it, Jeffrey, if you look at the code of policies for what a district governor has to do, There's so many things, and people are saying, I can't go to every club. Well, maybe in our next COL, which will be in Stephanie's year in 2025, we could introduce legislation that says you could have group meetings instead of going to individual. We have to find a way to adapt, because if we don't, people are not going to want to join. And so,
Go ahead, Steph.
You know, the whole idea of Rotary is to make sure that there's value. When people, think about the things that you like to do outside of Rotary. Maybe some of you are golfers, and you go out every week when the weather's good. Or some of you may get into retail therapy, or, some of you may like concerts and, that sort of thing. I like to go to professional football games. All right. So think about the money that we spend. We wear the garb, we go and we pay these ridiculous amounts of money for tickets, and we go because we find value in it. And that's the same thing that has to happen with Rotary, with our meetings, our events, and our leadership roles. If people aren't stepping up for leadership, it's because we've created something that says to them, this is not fun and it's too much work. And they don't see the value in doing that. So Tom's right. We need to examine our governance, even at the club level, to figure out, are we doing it the right way to make it attractive for people?
Thanks, Stephanie. And listen, Herb Klotz, our Rotary coordinator, and Diana Edwards, our regional membership coordinator, don't be afraid to jump in here if you've got something you want to add to any of these questions. Here's another one for you. And Steph, I'm going to give this one to you first. When it comes to club transformation, do you feel it's better to evolve slowly or revolutionize quickly?
Well, again, some of that depends on the assessment that you do with your club members. Your club members will let you know. In general, my experience is that most clubs want to do it slowly. They want to see, does this little change? Let's try pie for dessert and see if it works. And let's move on to something else. But there are some groups who are so ready for change that they may suggest, let's just blow this whole thing up and let's just, create something different. So the advice would be to go to your members and find out, because that's who's going to tell you what the best step will be.
Thanks, Steph.
Jeffrey, I think I'd like to add some more. I totally agree with Stephanie on that comment. Another thing to think about when we're looking at a club, if we're one of those clubs that has high turnover in our club, and our concern is, why are people leaving? A lot of times you'll find that those clubs are going to be more open to change than maybe a club that has very low turnover but can't bring anybody in. Okay. And they wonder why. Why will no one join their club? And and what Stephanie and Tom have been talking about today is essentially looking in the mirror and understanding where you are. So just to add a little bit, it depends on the club.
Thanks, Herb. Here's one from someone who shares my last name. It may in fact be my daughter. And Tom, to your Mark Maloney comment about his daughter, my daughter is a member of Innovative Club Model, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Eco Club. And she says, are there case studies of changes clubs have successfully made, service projects that seem to attract new members? Are there any case studies about that?
well, thank you very much, Jess, for asking that question. It's a great question. And we have anecdotal stories, and we do have surveys that have been done. It's interesting because we always get, and so many people go to young people and say, how do we attract you? How do we attract you? What we need to do is we need to ask the young people what they want and what they want to do. At 9 o'clock this morning, there was a Rotaract meeting that we skipped to come to this meeting, but it is with environmental young folks from around the world. There's like 24 different countries. And that's the one that we talked about that we formed from SRAG. We asked them what did they want to do, and what they want to do is they want to work on the environment. There's a club out of North Carolina that was formed out of Duke, and they didn't know if they should be a Rotaract club, they should be a Rotary club, or not do anything. But they wanted to know how can we serve Rotary? Well, Rotary has a memorandum of understanding with Habitat for Humanity, and we were able to fix that young group up with Habitat for Humanity, and they became a Rotary Club. And what they do is they do solar panels on Habitat homes. So I think the biggest mistake we can make with a new club or even our existing clubs is assume that we know everything. When I started a new club, there's a temptation to meet on Tuesday at a country club at 7:30 in the morning. Well, the people who wanted to start that club didn't want to do that club. Let's face it, if they wanted that club, they could have joined my club. So we have to ask them what they want, and we have to deliver what they're asking for. Thank you, Jess, for the question.
And PDG Louisa Horn is on this call, and she did a fabulous piece for the Rotary magazine talking about how her own club transformed and became simply irresistible. So she would be a great person to connect with to find out what were the things that she did in her club. Every club is different. There are some things that top of mind we all want in every Rotary club, no matter where we are in the world. Every Rotary club in the world should have a welcoming atmosphere. There should be somebody at the door saying, "Hey, we're so glad you're here. Come on in. Good to see you." Kind of like Cheers model, we like a place where everybody knows your name. We want that. But when you get into certain areas of the world, regionalization takes over. So what makes the club irresistible in India may not necessarily be the same thing that makes a club irresistible in Philadelphia. So we need to really look at, our cultures and our regions, but there are some overarching things that are important for every club in the world. But I would encourage you to reach out to PGG Louisa and check with her. Maybe she can even direct you to the article that she wrote for the Rotary magazine.
Thanks, Stephanie. Peter asks, are there guidelines available for the impact group? I think he's talking about your impact group. Are there guidelines available for the impact group? Where do we find them?
Yes, I can get that information to you, Jeffrey. An individual by the name of Patrick Longano is the creator of the impact model, and he has moved all through Zone 33 as well as outside of Zone 33 to actually visit clubs and talk with them about the impact model and to be present. So yes, there are definitely some guidelines and some success stories, and I can get that to Jeffrey. And Jeffrey, you can share it with everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Diana has put that link to those resources in the chat too.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. What advice do you have for clubs that have members that have a lot of opinions? Boy, I could just stop right there. What advice do you have for clubs that have members that have a lot of opinions about an upcoming fundraiser, service project, etc.? Before proceeding with the event, the members all agree to proceed and do it. But then when it comes to action, there are only a few members that participate.
So that's a very good question, and it's great to have those opinions. The most important thing is to do the project that most of the people want to do. When you do the survey, it'll also tell you what the majority of people want to do. We had a club in our district who came to us, a president of a club, and said, we have 50% of the people who want to do away with the four-way test and the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have 50% of our members who want to keep them. So they said, what do we do? And we said, do a survey. When they did a survey, it was a 23-person club. Only 2 people actually wanted to do away with the four-way test and the pledge. It's just they were very vocal to. So, we all face the time where maybe the gala is going down in dollars raised or the golf tournament's going down. It's important to see what things work. And if to have impact, which is the first strategic plan priority, we have to do the things that are going to make the most sense. So when you survey your members, if you do a project or a social that they want to do, you're more likely to have people step up and lead that because it was their idea. But if you try to push a project, let's say selling a raffle for a car, and nobody wants to do it, then it's going to be hard to get people to lead that effort. So if you listen to your members, they're more likely to do what they're suggesting, and then they feel like they belong to their club. They won't want to leave. Thanks for the question.
there's, when we came out of Orlando, was that last week or was it the week before? Whenever it was,
Last week, yeah.
the governors-elect leave there feeling like we have aimed a fire hose at their mouth and turned it on high. And not dissimilar to a lot of us in our clubs, there's a lot of white noise. There's so many things we can do. There's so many opportunities. And, it's that old adage of keep it simple. And maybe Stephanie, maybe you want to talk a little about Rotary's action plan and how those 4 pillars of the action plan can be kind of a blueprint for success. And sometimes maybe better to target what you're doing rather than trying to be everything to everybody and you fail at everything.
You're absolutely right. You referenced the action plan, which started out being Rotary's strategic plan. But when it launched, we changed the name to action plan for obvious reasons. When I say strategic plan, I mean, people just, they glaze over. That's it. They're done. Those words are like, it's just too rough. But action plan, because we're people of action, it makes more sense. So what is the action plan? Well, actually, they're guidelines. They're guidelines that come from, you talk about buy-in, comes from people from around the world. Rotarians, non-Rotarians, former Rotarians, Rotary alumni, interactors, people from all over the world. We had over 1 million points of contact with people suggesting what was important to move Rotary into a thriving future. And that's where the 4 priorities came from. So the priorities are there for clubs to use as a guideline to take a look at, what does this mean for my particular club? There's no recipe book. These are guidelines. It's like a beacon. So when clubs take each of those 4 priorities, and this would be a great program for those of you who are looking for a program for your club, take the 4 priorities of the action plan, split your club into 4 groups, give them each 20 minutes to talk about what does this mean here for my club, for our club. Talk about buy-in. That's where you get the buy-in. You're going to get good information and you're going to give them an opportunity to be heard. It's a great exercise. But when you do that, then you get information about what are the things that your club needs to do to make sure that you have a future. That's what the action plan is for. There's not going to be an action plan 2.0. There's not going to be a new one. I've heard too many times Rotarians say, well, we don't have to pay attention to this action plan because there's going to be another one in 2 years. No, there isn't. This is it. This is it. This is a guiding principle that helps us all move forward. Rotary International and the foundation have already begun to use those priorities to make a change. Now we need every club, all the clubs that are on this call, to think about how do we use those priorities to change or to further enhance what we're already doing. And that's going to give us a future.
Thanks, Stephanie. Dave Harridan says, based on, Dave, I love your questions. Based on RI's vast experience, do they have it's us, by the way, it's not they, it's all of us. We are Rotary. There is no us and them. It's not they. Based on RI's vast experience, do we have a very detailed, tactical, recommended best practice plan for A, adding new members, and B, starting a new Rotary club? Oh my God.
I'm not aware of one specific plan. Again, Dave, there's not a cookbook. You're not going to get a cookbook that says do this and this and this, and members are going to, be on your doorstep knocking, because it's different in different regions. We're losing members in North America because we haven't figured out how to make the value. What's the value proposition for people to say, I have to do that? When we make our clubs so irresistible, membership will take care of itself, because the people who are in our clubs will say, this is so great, I'm not leaving this. And the people who aren't in our clubs will look and say, what are they doing over there? I need to be a part of that. That's what we really need to get to. India has figured it out. They are growing in membership as well as other parts of the world, because they figured out what's giving value to the people who are becoming Rotarians in that part of the world. And it's going to be different. If we try to implement everything that they do in India in our Rotary clubs, it probably wouldn't work. Like some of the stuff, yes, but the mentoring that Tom mentioned, yes, but some of it, no. You know, for instance, I was on a call the other night and we were talking in Brazil. If we tried to implement a Rotary Club meeting that started at 9 o'clock at night, our members would say, what the hell are you talking about? I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. But in Brazil, there are hundreds of clubs that start their meetings at 9 p.m. because for their culture, it's a time of the day, a time of the evening where they can handle that kind of Rotary meeting and business. So we have to think about, what works for our areas. I can't stress that enough that, we have to individualize it. So I really don't see that there's one specific plan. Again, we have guidelines. Tom talks about innovative clubs. That's a guideline. I talk about, taking our existing legacy clubs and making them irresistible by transforming them. So there are guidelines, but I don't see that there's one particular strategy that every club in the world can employ.
I'm going to make a comment, and then Herb and or Diana, I'm going to ask you if you want to weigh in on that topic.
Sure.
Stephanie, we had a conversation in Orlando about a disconnect, meaning, Dave, to your question, if a club is not providing a value proposition, whatever that is, and whatever that is might be what the club members tell you that is in an assessment. But if there is no value proposition, then there's no attraction, and then there's no engagement. And so it's all about attraction and engagement, and that attraction comes from a value proposition. What we were talking about in Orlando was, if you look at our Rotary magazine or Rotary.org, and you see this amazing organization, and it is an amazing organization. And yet one of the governors-elect said to me, there's a disconnect between what I hear and see here and then what I see when I walk in my club door. That's a problem. That's a problem if we're not delivering at the club level a member experience that is a value proposition and that mirrors what the organization has to offer. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and ask if Herb, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Well, there is. I want to tell a story, but we just completed a study across the United States and Canada of clubs with a growth culture, and learned about what were the attributes of these clubs. And actually, we talked about this last Tuesday with our district governor teams and our district membership chairs and a number of others. But what I wanted to tell was just tell a story about one of the things that we did when we put this survey together was, well, there were about 13 club presidents across the United States and Canada that let us interview them. And there was this one club president in North Carolina, and her name was Donna Boyles, and she was from King, North Carolina, which was about, I think she said it was an hour north of Winston-Salem. And this was a small Rotary club. This is sort of getting at Dave Harridan's question, but Stephanie's absolutely right. There isn't one right answer to this, but this was just such an amazing answer. They had, I think, 20 members in their club. So they were a relatively small club, and they wanted to grow. And now I think they've got about double that now in their club. And again, it was a rural club. And what she said was, well, I was club membership chair for a year, and I got to learn a whole lot about membership. And then when I became president, everybody in the club was literally on the membership committee.
That's right.
She put everyone in, literally, she put everyone on the membership committee. And she had two committees focused on engagement. She had two committees focused on attraction. And she had one committee focused on innovation. And it worked. Because when you've got a club of 20 members or 15 or 10 members, what's the most important thing we need to do? Well, we need more members so that we can do more. And that's exactly what they did. And I'm sorry I can't share the video right now, but more to come on this. We're going to be rolling this out across our president-elect training in the coming months. And I'm sure we're going to be getting opportunities to share this more with more and more people across our zone. So,
Thanks, Eric.
that's just a little story for you.
Appreciate it. Now, Stephanie and Tom, I want to check in with you. Are you still good on time? We got some more questions coming in. Are you still good
Yeah.
for a few more minutes? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Tony Marmo, did you have your hand up and I missed it? Did you have your hand up in your little screen, or was that a mistake?
No, yeah, I was scratching my head. No, actually, there was a comment made about locating the action plan, but I think David posted it in the chat box. So Steve Lawback had that, and I thought that was important to point out so folks can go there and read it and be up to speed.
Yeah, and by the way, if we run out of time, we've got all kinds of things. We're going to print out this chat and we will get to you. If there are resources that were put into Diane's been putting resources into the chat, we'll get those to you. If there are questions that we can't get to before we end here today, we'll try to get those questions answered for you as well. Mina, you're from the Rotary Club of Media, club I'm a little bit familiar with. You have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I do. So I've had this question for the past 20 minutes, and with various comments made, the format of the question is going to change a little bit. And in that, I've lived in the United States for 45 years. And as an outsider, observing the culture of the surroundings I had to live in was absolutely critical to my survival. So as such, I have a way of observing the societal changes around us that might be a little different than most people. And in that, currently, what I'm observing is the post-pandemic society that we must adapt to. There is a very comfortable societal change in everyone kind of assuming we're going to have to live in isolation. I am also married to a psychiatrist. So I see the illness that comes with being isolated by being so disconnected from the world that we're used to living in. So for me, as I see Rotary International, I see an organization that has an absolutely critical role to play. And in that, we have the history of staying connected, and the fact that we're losing membership is very, very saddening situation that I'm obviously have been a bit aware of. Is there a way in your travels, and Stephanie, you've started to hit on this, about making the Rotary membership to be irresistible? But I like to see that irresistibility do make a little bit of connection to how do we have our membership directly connected to engaging one another within the community that we like to serve. So I guess, do you have any examples of clubs you've seen who succeed in this? Because I think that's probably at the heart of how we need to expand our membership, become very, very valuable in the way we have to adjust to new way of living.
Thank you, Mina.
Well, a couple of comments, Mina. First of all, you're absolutely right. We are the organization that showed the world the power of connection. When the pandemic hit, the way we did Rotary was taken from all of us. We couldn't do it. We couldn't meet. Yet every country where Rotary exists, every place in the world figured it out. Most people went to something virtual. A few places did this. They just got their device and checked on members, but they stayed connected. And then we had these fabulous COVID response grants, and clubs all over the world stepped up and said, yes, we want to help our community. So you're absolutely right. We are the organization that showed the world how to stay connected. And that's really critical. So I forget where I was going to go with that. But Tom, you look like you want to say something. To pick this up, and I'll come back to it. I can't believe I lost
Sure,
it.
I think Mina's right. If you look around the world, there's cultural connections and there's patterns that we're picking up on. And it's interesting because, you know, if you look, Mina, around the world where there's a decline in membership, you see North America, you see Australia, you see Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. What do all three of these have in common? Well, they have in common they were around first. They've been around for a long time. And this goes back to Dave Harris's question and to Ed Lind's question. You know, Dave is saying, you know, what one thing can we do? We could focus on membership. You know, when I was president of my club, we brought in 31 members during that time. Why? Because every board meeting, we didn't start with review of the minutes, review of financials, what's going on next. We started with membership. Who's been to our club? Who can we assign to that? If you make it a priority, every member who visits, make a foam core board. You know, like Stephanie said, be outside and greet people. You know, Ed was asking about the exposure, 60%. You know, what do? We need to talk about membership. When you're in the district or your club president, you want people to come up and say, hey, Madam President, I brought in a member. Aren't you excited? You know, you got to focus on it. And if you focus on it, we can make it happen. Thank you for the question.
Jeffrey, you're muted.
Yeah, it's the first time I've been on a Zoom call, Stephanie. Thank you. Somebody had made a comment earlier about exposure. You know, the community, we have a great communications team in Evanston. They put out some just unbelievable stuff, some resources. And so a lot of your questions about where do I find this and where do I find that, go to Rotary.org, go to My Rotary, go to the Brand Center, go to the Learning Center. I mean, there are resources and tools there, surveys and assessments that can be just so helpful to you. And don't try to do everything all at once. Start small, pick a path and just chip away at it. But the fact is that if our clubs do become more attractive, more engaging, more irresistible, then that helps us with the problem that we're having in North America with membership. The fact is, it's different than it was 40 years ago. We used to be the only games in town, and there are there's so much competition now for people's attention, and we're just one of those little things in a much bigger pond. And so we're no longer a destination. We've got to make ourselves a destination again, and that comes by making ourselves connected to our community, but irresistible as clubs with a member experience. Visitor, I'm trying to read this. A great way to attract new members while giving the club a chance to brag on what they do. Very successful in 7210. I must have missed something that started out. Lisa Leonard says, sounds like starting a new club would be a full-time job. Boy, we hope not. With club leaders already stretched so thin and people not stepping up to be leaders, who are the ideal people to take the lead on starting a new club? Tom, I'm going to throw that one right to you.
Well, thank you very much. And you know, the best person to start a new club is the person who wants to start a new club, the person who's passionate about it. I mean, I wish I can say that I was a futurist and I can see the future. And but we started the End Human Trafficking Club because several people came to my district governor and me and said, we're quitting Rotary. And we said, why would you quit Rotary? And they said, you don't understand. You know, we've had a tri-district collaboration, but they couldn't get speakers at clubs because they weren't a club. They couldn't get district grants because they weren't a club. So we said, start a club. They said, it's hard. We said, it's not hard. And you know what? They started that club. And it's interesting, Jeffrey, because if you look, I was up until recently our Rotary coordinator for our paired zone, which runs in the middle of the US from Canada down to Texas. And the district which was doing the best was the district who was working at it the hardest. You know, they would ask us to come speak. They had their past district governors come speak. We need to listen to our community and deliver what they want, whether it be a new club or to our existing club. And we need to do exactly what you're doing, Jeffrey, with this call, asking in experts to talk about it. So I applaud you for working on it. The more you work at it, the better it gets.
Hey, Tom, let me ask you this question because I see this a lot in my travels around North America. And Stephanie, Herb, I'm going to guess that you see this. Tom, if I asked you the question, in a community, in an area, geographic area, whatever, if somebody wanted to start a new club, a traditional club model, an innovative club model, who is often the biggest adversary that they have to face?
You know, it's themselves. When we started the first club in our district that hasn't been, didn't start a club for 10 years, they were like, oh, you'll never start a new club. I said, well, I'm starting a club for veterans. You'll never do it. Veterans are already in our regular clubs. Well, they're wrong. And as soon as you start that first club, Jeffrey, then everyone else comes up, oh, I want to start a club. I want to start a club. When we started the Veterans Club, there were a dozen that popped up around the world, from South Africa to, here. Same thing when we started the first End Human Trafficking Club. We have Virginia on here who came to our meetings for a year. And then she said, we're not going to do all human trafficking, but I want to work on ending sex trafficking in San Francisco. We had suicide prevention clubs pop up. Why? Because we started the Veterans Club. We have to tell people they can do it and give them examples, and they'll start their clubs and they'll be successful. And it's interesting. There was a club in Kansas that started an End Human Trafficking Club, and now they have spawned another club to end harvesting of human organs in jails and things in prisons in some places of the world. So, Jeff, we need to listen to those people, and then we need to get those spark plugs and just let them go and help them any way we can.
I mentioned my second Rotary Club and how not irresistible it had become. Well, that club is now down to 6 members. Six members in a community. They're located in an industrial park. There are international organizations headquartered there. They should have 600 members, not 6. Yet every time district leadership goes to them and talks about, a membership plan, it's that club, it's those 6 members who say, no, we don't want to give up our charter. No, we like it the way we are. So, what's going to happen is they're going to die. And once they all die, then somebody else can go move into that community and start a new Rotary Club.
I will share my experience with resistance. The answer is it depends. At least that's been my experience. We've started a number of new clubs where clubs had folded in the past, and pretty much no resistance there. It works very, very well. Satellite clubs are a new experience, usually not that big of a resistance. There was one case, though, similar to Stephanie, where we try to start a new club near another club. And yes, we did get resistance from that club, but ultimately the new club was started. So,
well, and Louisa, thank you, Herb. Louisa made a comment in answer to my question that existing clubs are often the resistance. And that's what I find to be the most true, is you want to start a new club, and our biggest adversary is an existing club. And we've got to stop that nonsense. And the fear is, what we hear is, well, they're going to cannibalize. They're going to take all of our good members, or they're going to take all of our members. There was a 5-year study done of all new Rotary clubs. And the fact is that 88% of the members of those new clubs were new to Rotary. And only 12% of those members were existing Rotarians. And by the way, they were going to leave your club anyway. So we've got to get over this nonsense. A rising tide raises all ships. And a new club in a community, in a district, whether it's a traditional club, a new innovative club model, partner with them, work with them. Don't be afraid of them. A rising tide raises all ships.
I mentioned the impact club model that my club embraced, and, we have a satellite impact. There isn't one member from my Rotary Club who has joined and switched to that impact model. All of our members feel engaged by this new group. We feel like mentors to the impact model, and we mix and mingle in our socials, but there has been no cannibalism. I can't even say it. We haven't been cannibalized. So, that's a crazy notion that I don't know where it came from, but what it does for our existing club members was it raised our awareness of the power of Rotary, and it made us feel so valued in that we can help mentor these people, because clearly they're not all getting a lot of Rotary information because they only go out and do service. So when we do get together with them as socials and other fundraisers and other activities, it's our job and our responsibility, and we take it seriously to help get them some understanding, some depth in Rotary. So we've not lost a single member to that group.
Steph, there's just so many ways that this can happen. I spoke at the Vancouver Club out in British Columbia a couple of years ago, and you will never see a more traditional Rotary Club. Lunchtime meeting, dark mahogany walls, oil paintings, a membership that skews a little bit older, but a vital club in Vancouver. And yet they wanted to have younger members, but the younger members didn't like the lunchtime, didn't like the everything about what they saw in that existing club. So they started a club within a club, and they don't even call it a satellite club. It was a club within a club. And it's a whole lot of younger members, or people that can't meet at lunch, but traditionally it skews younger. And they meet at a different time. They are members of the Vancouver Rotary Club, but they just meet at a different time. They have joint projects, joint fundraisers, joint service projects, but they have separate meetings. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Talk about expanding a reach. That's great.
Exactly. So look, we're coming up on our time here, and I want to be very respectful of everyone's time, and especially Tom and Stephanie and Herb and Diana and some of the leadership and membership in our zones. The fact is, this is the conversation that we need to have. And so today, and just you being here and listening, and this is the conversation that we need to have. And it's about Grow Rotary. It's not just about growing numbers and bringing in people with a pulse. It's about growing Rotary, which is growing our image, growing our awareness in the community, growing our numbers, more hands on deck, because there's a lot of important work we have to do. It's growing all of that and growing the Rotary Foundation. They all connect. It's all part of the same equation. So I'm going to give an opportunity for Herb, Diana, Stephanie, and Tom to make any closing comment that they want to make before we thank everyone and get ready for the Giants to lose a football game tonight.
Well, I'll go first because my voice is the one that's slowly evaporating, even what I have. I just want to thank you all for being part of this special program. As Jeffrey said at the very beginning, it's Saturday. You all could be doing so many different things, and you chose to be here to engage in this conversation. So Tom and I are really delighted that you were part of this program, and our thanks to Jeffrey and all who helped schedule it and set it up for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephanie. Tom?
I echo what Stephanie said. We were so happy to be here. If you can just focus on membership, because if you increase membership, donations to the foundation go up, more service projects. I couldn't agree more that we need to make our current clubs attractive. I couldn't agree more with Jeffrey and Stephanie. I can give you all kinds of examples if we had time. We recently started a Pride Club. 2 individuals are going to leave Rotary, both past presidents. They didn't feel comfortable in their club. Added 35 new members. Great club. Friend of mine moved to Florida. Just started a club to do international service because their local club in Florida only did district service. So focus on it. If you need our help, we're here to help you. And thank you all for all you do.
And thank you, Tom. Herb, look, the fact is there's so much support for you at the district level, at the zone level, at the regional level, out of Evanston. And so Herb Klotz is our Rotary coordinator for Zone 32 on the call. He's a huge resource to you. He's got assistant Rotary coordinators across the zone. Tap into that. Diana Edwards is here. Diana Wave. Diana's here on the call. She's our regional membership coordinator out of Evanston. But these people are accessible to you, and they have tools and resources and anecdotes and advice that can help you to help all of us to grow Rotary. Herb, anything you want to finish up with here?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on this call today, and thanks for that plug. I appreciate it. And yes, we're available to come to your district, to your clubs. Just ask, and many of you have already done that. So thanks a lot, Jeffrey.
Diana, anything you want to add?
Absolutely. I mean, this was a fantastic call. But I do just want to reiterate that, yes, there is some form of disconnect. Like you said, Jeffrey, like we get all of this information, we're pumped. And then once we get to a club, it's like, what is this place? Right? And so I really have to just emphasize is that we have to step back and stop looking at our personal club. Like, I want my club to look like this, as opposed to, if we're trying to grow membership, then whatever that means, okay, yes, if we need to be flexible and change up our lunch or meeting time, let's do that. Like, for those individuals that can't make it. Also allowing individuals to, like, if they can't show up to those meetings, record it, allow them to watch it and say, yes, you attended, no problem, as opposed to like putting so many stipulations and guidelines behind it, and just being open and true to what we're saying every time we get on these calls, and using the resources that we have, because we have a ton. Like we said, we have a ton of resources, but yes, they can sometimes get a little bit overwhelming. But like Jeffrey advised, like, take one at a time and go through the steps and navigating that. And of course, you have us to reach out to myself if you're looking for information, resources, presentations, or what have you, instead of trying to create your own. I'm happy to assist with that. You have Herb, who's a fantastic individual that I'm just like hoping that we can get another you when it's your time to go. So just thank you guys for just allowing me to be here. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Yeah, there's no one answer. There's no simple answer. But there are answers, and there's all kinds of resources and tools, both human, video, web-based, surveys to help you. Thanks for being part of this day with us. Because Tony's on mute, I'll say go Eagles. If he was not on mute, he'd say go Giants. Whatever football team.
Oh no, pal, that was short-lived. It's
Right,
going
I
to be
know.
go Giants here. And I don't know, it's Philadelphia City dinner versus New York City dinner. Is that what's on the line here?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
Conversation. Figure out what you want to lose. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you all down the road in Rotary. Thank you.